Hey guys, tonight we're exploring a story that everyone in history should know. The story is why ancient Greeks couldn't explain depression. You get comfortable, take a moment, like the video, and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Why ancient Greeks couldn't explain depression. Imagine that the world has grown quiet. The day has come to a gentle close, and the warm light of the Mediterranean sun has slipped beyond the distant hills. A soft evening breeze carries the scent of olive trees across a narrow stone path. Somewhere nearby, a shepherd gathers his flock, while the final songs of small birds fade into the growing silence. The sea, never far away in much of Greece, breathes with a slow and steady rhythm against the rocky shore. You find yourself walking into a world that has been gone for more than 2,000 years. It is a familiar world in many ways. Children laugh as they chase one another through dusty streets. Bakers shape fresh loaves before sunrise. Potters carefully smooth wet clay with practiced hands. Fishermen repair worn nets beneath wooden shelters, speaking softly as daylight slowly disappears. Yet beneath these ordinary moments lies a mystery that no philosopher, physician, or poet of ancient Greece could fully explain. It is a feeling many people today would recognize almost immediately. A heavy sadness without an obvious cause. A loss of joy that lingers through the brightest mornings. A quiet exhaustion that no amount of sleep seems to ease. A mind that slowly withdraws from the beauty of everyday life. Today, we often call this condition depression. Modern medicine understands it as a complex combination of biological, psychological, and social influences. Doctors recognize that changes inside the brain, life experiences, inherited traits, and many other factors may all play important roles. But the people of ancient Greece did not possess this understanding. Their world was rich with ideas, filled with remarkable thinkers whose discoveries shaped philosophy, mathematics, medicine, politics, and science for centuries to come. They observed nature with extraordinary curiosity. They searched for patterns in the stars, questioned the meaning of justice, debated the purpose of happiness, and carefully examined the human body. Even so, when it came to the hidden landscape of the human mind, many questions remained beyond their reach. Tonight, we gently explore those questions. Picture yourself arriving just before dawn in a small Greek town sometime during the 5th century before the Common Era. The air is cool. Thin clouds drift above distant mountains. Oil lamps still glow faintly inside a few homes, while most families remain asleep. As the morning slowly arrives, life awakens, little by little. Roosters announce the coming day. Wooden doors creak open. A woman carries a clay jar toward the village fountain. An elderly man sweeps dust from the entrance of his workshop. Everything follows familiar rhythms that have repeated for generations. Ancient Greek life depended upon routine. The changing seasons guided planting and harvest. Religious festivals marked important moments throughout the year. Families honored their ancestors, Citizens gathered in marketplaces to exchange goods and ideas. Sailors watched the wind before beginning long journeys across the sea. Order was deeply valued. When nature behaved as expected, people felt reassured. When crops grew well, they thanked the gods. When storms arrived unexpectedly, they searched for reasons. The desire to explain the world touched nearly every part of Greek life. If lightning flashed across the sky, stories of Zeus offered meaning. If disease spread through a community, physicians looked for physical causes, while priests also performed sacred rituals. Nothing seemed entirely without explanation. Yet some experiences remained especially difficult to understand. Imagine a young man who once enjoyed conversation with friends. He loved music played on the lyre. He smiled during festivals. He worked beside his father in the family vineyard. Then, slowly, something changes. At first, no one notices. He speaks less often. His appetite becomes smaller. His laughter grows rare. He sits alone for long stretches beneath an olive tree, staring toward distant hills without saying a word. His family assumes he is simply tired. Perhaps he worked too hard. Perhaps the summer heat has weakened him. Perhaps he has worried too much about the coming harvest. Days become weeks. The heaviness remains. His mother prepares his favorite meal. He barely touches it. Friends invite him to wrestle in the gymnasium. He politely declines. The music that once brought comfort now seems strangely empty. No wound appears upon his body. No fever burns his skin. No broken bone explains his suffering. His pain lives somewhere unseen. For the ancient Greeks, invisible suffering presented a difficult challenge. Human beings naturally search for causes. When someone coughs, we suspect illness. When someone limps, we expect an injured leg. But when sorrow settles quietly inside a person without any obvious reason, understanding becomes much more difficult. Many Greek thinkers believed that balance formed the foundation of health. Balance appeared everywhere. The changing seasons balanced warmth and cold. The body balanced strength and rest. Communities balanced freedom with responsibility. Even the universe itself seemed ordered according to patterns. It was therefore natural that physicians began searching for balance within the human body as well. Among the most influential medical ideas was the theory of the four humors. According to this understanding, the body contained four essential fluids: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, black bile. Health depended upon these substances remaining in harmony. When balance disappeared, illness followed. Today we know the human body functions very differently. Yet for centuries, this theory represented one of history's earliest attempts to explain disease through natural causes rather than purely supernatural ones. That was a remarkable step. Instead of believing every illness came directly from divine punishment, many Greek physicians carefully observed patients. They watched symptoms. They compared illnesses. They recorded changes. They searched for patterns. Although their conclusions were often incorrect by modern standards, their method of observation laid important foundations for medicine. One particular humor attracted special attention: black bile. The Greek word associated with eventually gave rise to the term melancholy. Physicians believed that too much black bile could produce deep sadness, fearfulness, and withdrawal from ordinary life. From a modern perspective, this explanation was scientifically inaccurate. But within the knowledge available at the time, it offered something important. It suggested that emotional suffering might have physical origins instead of representing weakness alone. This was a thoughtful idea for its age. Picture yourself entering the home of an experienced physician. Shelves hold clay jars filled with herbs. Bundles of dried plants hang from wooden beams overhead. A faint smell of rosemary, thyme, and crushed leaves fills the room. Patients arrive quietly, hoping for relief from many different conditions. Some suffer aching joints. Others carry infected wounds. Children arrive with fevers. Then someone enters whose greatest pain cannot easily be seen. The physician watches carefully. He asks gentle questions. Has the patient been sleeping? Has he been eating? Does sadness arrive every day? Does fear remain even when nothing dangerous is nearby? These observations reflect genuine curiosity. Yet the answers available remain limited. Without knowledge of neurons, neurotransmitters, hormones, genetics, or modern psychology, the physician must interpret everything through the ideas his culture provides. He considers diet. He considers weather. He considers age. He considers bodily balance. Perhaps black bile has increased. Perhaps seasonal changes have disturbed natural harmony. Perhaps certain foods have altered the body's internal condition. Treatment follows naturally from these beliefs. Gentle exercise, fresh air, changes in diet, rest, music, conversation, bathing, sometimes herbal preparations, sometimes bloodletting or purging. Practices we now know could often do more harm than good. Not every treatment was ineffective. Some patients may indeed have found comfort through companionship, nutritious food, sunlight, or physical activity. These remain valuable parts of emotional well-being even today. Yet for many others, the deeper causes of depression would remain untouched. Imagine living in a world where no language fully separates grief from illness, sadness from exhaustion, or emotional pain from physical imbalance. The experience itself is real. The explanation remains incomplete. As evening settles once more over ancient Greece, oil lamps begin to glow inside modest homes. Families gather for simple meals of bread, olives, vegetables, and perhaps a little fish. Quiet conversations drift through narrow streets, while the stars slowly appear above the darkening sky. Somewhere, unseen by those around him, a man still carries a weight that no physician, philosopher, or poet has yet learned to describe completely. His story, and the ideas that ancient Greece gradually developed to understand such hidden suffering, are only beginning. The following morning arrives with the gentle certainty that has guided countless generations. A pale ribbon of light stretches across the eastern horizon, and the hills slowly awaken beneath the first warmth of the sun. Olive leaves shimmer softly as the breeze moves through their silver-green branches. Somewhere in the distance, goats climb rocky slopes with practiced ease, their small bells creating quiet rhythms that mingle with the songs of waking birds. Picture yourself walking once more along the stone paths of ancient Greece. The world feels peaceful. Yet within this peaceful landscape, many people carry burdens that cannot be seen. A merchant unlocks his small shop before sunrise. A fisherman unties his boat from the wooden dock. Children hurry beside their parents toward the market, laughing as they weave through narrow streets. Potters shape damp clay into graceful bowls, while blacksmiths prepare their fires for another day's work. Life continues, just as it always has. Most people around you seem occupied with ordinary concerns. Will the harvest be plentiful? Will the sea remain calm? Will the family stay healthy through another season? These questions are practical, familiar, and shared by nearly everyone. But there are quieter questions that rarely find easy answers. Why does one person wake each morning with energy, while another struggles simply to rise from bed? Why does joy sometimes disappear without warning? Why can a peaceful village still contain silent suffering? The ancient Greeks noticed these mysteries, even if they could not fully explain them. Their society admired strength in many different forms. Physical strength was celebrated in athletic competitions. Intellectual strength was praised in schools of philosophy. Courage was honored on the battlefield. Wisdom was respected in old age. Citizens often hoped to become balanced individuals, capable of reason, self-control, and thoughtful action. This ideal shaped education, politics, and everyday conversation. Imagine growing up in such a world. From childhood, you would hear stories of heroes who endured hardship with remarkable determination. You would learn poems describing courage during impossible moments. You would watch athletes train patiently beneath the hot Mediterranean sun. You would see philosophers debating difficult questions for hours without raising their voices. Self-control was not simply admired. It was considered an important part of living well. Because of this, emotional suffering was sometimes difficult to understand. If someone appeared unable to enjoy life, observers naturally searched for explanations that matched their understanding of the world. Perhaps the person had experienced a recent loss. Perhaps illness had weakened the body. Perhaps the gods were sending a lesson. Perhaps the balance of the humors had shifted. Few people imagined that invisible changes within the brain itself might contribute to prolonged sadness. That idea belonged to a future still many centuries away. You find yourself entering the bustling agora, the public marketplace that serves as the heart of many Greek cities. The air smells of fresh bread, ripe figs, olives preserved in clay jars, and herbs drying beneath woven baskets. Merchants greet familiar customers with calm voices. Travelers exchange stories from distant islands. Craftsmen display carefully carved wooden tools. Children chase one another between market stalls until gentle reminders bring them back to their parents. Here, conversations flow as naturally as water from a nearby fountain. News spreads quickly. A successful harvest, a delayed ship, an upcoming festival, a philosopher preparing a public discussion. Among these conversations, people also notice changes in one another. Someone who no longer visits the market becomes a subject of quiet concern. Someone who suddenly avoids friends raises gentle questions. Ancient communities were often closely connected. People knew their neighbors well. Daily routines made unusual behavior easier to notice. Yet noticing was not the same as understanding. A neighbor might say that a man seemed unusually withdrawn. Another might suggest that advancing age had made him weary. Someone else might believe he had been thinking too deeply about life's difficulties. Each explanation reflected the knowledge available at the time. None reached the biological understanding that modern science continues to explore today. Imagine sitting beneath the shade of a large plane tree outside the city walls. Nearby, a teacher speaks quietly to several young students. The lesson is not about mathematics or astronomy. Instead, it concerns the nature of the human soul. For many Greek philosophers, understanding the soul meant understanding what made a person truly alive. Different schools of philosophy offered different answers. Some believed that reason should guide every action. Others emphasized harmony between desire and wisdom. Still others encouraged freedom from unnecessary fear. Although these ideas differed, they shared one important feature. They focused on helping people live meaningful lives. This was not medicine in the modern sense. It was philosophy as a way of living. Imagine listening as one philosopher explains that happiness does not come from wealth alone. Another argues that peace begins with mastering one's own thoughts. A third reminds his students that fortune changes for everyone, and therefore wisdom must remain steady, even when circumstances shift. These teachings brought comfort to many people. Even today, readers continue to find value in parts of ancient philosophy. Yet philosophy could not always relieve every form of emotional suffering. Some sadness extends beyond reasoned advice. Some despair remains despite wise conversation. Some minds continue struggling even when surrounded by caring family and loyal friends. The Greeks observed this reality, although they lacked the scientific language to describe why it happened. As the afternoon grows warmer, you wander toward a quiet sanctuary dedicated to healing. Such sacred places offered hope to many visitors. People traveled long distances, seeking relief from illness, pain, and uncertainty. The atmosphere is calm. Stone columns cast long shadows across smooth ground. Incense drifts gently through the warm air. Birds settle quietly among nearby trees. Those who arrive often bring prayers along with their worries. Some hope for relief from aching limbs. Others seek healing for failing eyesight. Some carry illnesses that physicians have been unable to cure. Among them are people whose suffering cannot be easily seen. Perhaps they no longer sleep peacefully. Perhaps fear follows them every day. Perhaps overwhelming sadness has settled into their hearts. The line between physical illness and emotional distress was often blurred. Both belonged to the mysterious experience of being human. Dreams sometimes played an important role in these healing traditions. People believed that meaningful dreams might offer guidance or reveal paths toward recovery. During the quiet hours of the night, surrounded by sacred spaces, some hoped that divine wisdom would reach them while they slept. Whether healing came through faith, rest, or simple hope, many visitors left feeling calmer than when they arrived. Hope itself has always carried quiet strength. Even today, compassionate care often begins by helping someone feel less alone. As evening slowly returns, fishermen guide their boats toward shore. Their nets are heavy on some days and nearly empty on others. No fisherman controls the sea. He can prepare carefully. He can learn from experience, but he cannot command the waves. The ancient Greeks often viewed life in similar ways. Human beings could pursue wisdom. They could strengthen character. They could honor the gods. They could care for family. Yet some events remained beyond human control. Illness belonged to that uncertain world. So did unexpected sorrow. A thoughtful observer might notice that emotional suffering often arrived without choosing only the weak or the poor. It could touch respected citizens. It could visit successful merchants. It could appear among soldiers, poets, craftsmen, or teachers. No household stood completely beyond its reach. Still, without modern neuroscience, psychology, or psychiatry, these experiences remained wrapped in mystery. The Greeks came remarkably close in some of their observations. They recognized patterns. They saw that the body and mind influenced one another. They understood that environment, habits, and daily life mattered. But they could not see the hidden workings of the brain. That invisible landscape would remain unexplored for thousands of years. Night settles gently across the countryside. Stars slowly fill the dark sky above quiet temples and sleeping villages. Oil lamps flicker behind wooden shutters. The scent of cooling earth rises after the warmth of the day. Somewhere, a philosopher continues writing by lamplight. Elsewhere, a physician quietly reviews the symptoms of patients he hopes to help tomorrow. Neither realizes that future generations will discover entirely new ways of understanding the silent burdens carried by the human mind. For now, ancient Greece continues searching, asking thoughtful questions that will echo through history long after its cities have become ruins. And our quiet journey through those questions has only just begun. The night passes gently, and little by little, the darkness gives way to another peaceful morning. A soft mist lingers over the valleys, wrapping olive groves and vineyards in a quiet blanket of silver. Dew gathers on blades of grass that grow between weathered stones, while the first rays of sunlight slowly warm the white walls of small homes. Somewhere in the distance, a rooster announces the new day, and the gentle sound echoes across the hills before fading into silence. Imagine stepping onto a narrow path that leads toward a small farming village. The earth beneath your feet is firm from many seasons of careful use. Wild herbs grow beside the road, releasing their pleasant fragrance whenever a breeze brushes across them. Bees drift from flower to flower, paying little attention to the people beginning another ordinary day. The pace of life feels unhurried. A woman kneads dough outside her home while speaking softly with her daughter. An elderly man sharpens a simple iron tool before walking to his field. A shepherd pauses for a moment, watching the sky to judge the weather before guiding his flock toward fresh pasture. Everything seems familiar. Everything appears peaceful. Yet peace on the outside does not always mean peace within, even in this quiet village. Someone may wake with a heart that feels unusually heavy. No visible illness explains it. No recent tragedy has occurred. The harvest promises to be good. Family members remain healthy. Friends continue their daily visits. Still, An invisible weight settles over the mind. The ancient Greeks noticed such moments, although they struggled to explain why they happened. To them, every part of nature seemed connected. The changing of the seasons, the movement of the stars, the tides of the sea, the growth of crops, even the rhythm of the human body. When one part of nature lost its balance, another part often seemed to change as well. This way of thinking shaped much of Greek medicine. Rather than separating the body and the mind completely, many physicians believed they worked together. That idea was, in some ways, remarkably thoughtful. Today, modern medicine also recognizes that physical health and emotional health influence one another. Chronic illness can affect mood. Long periods of stress can influence the body. Poor sleep may make emotional struggles even more difficult. The Greeks sensed that these connections existed. What they lacked was the scientific knowledge to understand the deeper biological reasons behind them. Picture yourself entering the home of a respected physician. The room is simple but carefully organized. Clay jars line wooden shelves. Bundles of mint, sage, fennel, and thyme hang drying from ceiling beams. Sunlight enters through a small opening, filling the room with warm, golden light. Patients arrive one after another. Some carry swollen ankles from long journeys. Others complain of stomach pain after eating spoiled food. One elderly woman struggles with aching joints that have stiffened over many winters. Then another visitor quietly enters. He appears healthy. His clothes are neat. His breathing is calm. No wound marks his skin, yet his eyes seem distant. The physician greets him kindly and begins asking questions. "How have you been sleeping?" The man lowers his eyes. "Not well." "Do you still enjoy your work?" He hesitates before answering. "Not as much as I once did." "Do you spend time with your friends?" "I often prefer to stay alone." These questions may sound familiar today. Modern doctors still ask many of them when trying to understand emotional well-being. The difference lies in what comes next. A physician in ancient Greece could only interpret these answers through the knowledge available in his own time. He observes carefully. Perhaps the patient's diet has changed. Perhaps too much black bile has gathered within the body. Perhaps too little exercise has disturbed natural balance. Perhaps the cool, damp weather has affected the humors. Each possibility seems reasonable, according to the medical ideas of the age. None reaches the true complexity of depression as modern science understands it. Still, we should remember something important. These physicians were not careless observers. Quite the opposite. Many watched their patients with remarkable patience. They recorded symptoms. They compared one illness with another. They searched for consistent patterns. Without microscopes, brain imaging, laboratory testing, or knowledge of chemistry, observation became their greatest tool. Imagine how difficult their work must have been. Two people might describe the same sadness in very different ways. One speaks openly. Another remains silent. One struggles for several weeks. Another continues suffering for years. Some improve unexpectedly. Others grow steadily worse. Even today, depression does not appear exactly the same in every individual. For physicians over 2,000 years ago, these differences made understanding even more challenging. As the afternoon grows warmer, You leave the physician's house and continue toward a nearby gymnasium. Unlike modern gyms, these places were centers of education as well as exercise. Young men practiced wrestling, running, throwing the discus, and strengthening their bodies. Teachers discussed poetry between lessons. Philosophers occasionally walked beneath shaded pathways while speaking with eager students. The Greeks admired harmony. A healthy body, a thoughtful mind, a disciplined character. They believed these qualities should grow together whenever possible. Exercise was not simply about becoming stronger. It was considered part of living a balanced life. A physician might recommend regular walking, wrestling, or light physical activity for someone who seemed withdrawn. Today, scientific research suggests that physical activity can indeed support mental well-being for many people, although it is not a complete treatment for clinical depression. In this small way, ancient observations sometimes pointed toward practices that still carry value. Not because the Greeks understood brain chemistry, but because careful observation occasionally led them toward helpful habits. Nearby, several musicians begin tuning their instruments. A gentle melody rises into the warm afternoon air. The soft sound of the lyre blends with quiet conversation and distant laughter. Music held an important place throughout Greek society. It accompanied festivals, religious ceremonies, education, poetry, family celebrations. Some philosophers believed music could shape character and calm emotional unrest. Although they could not explain the neurological effects of music, they recognized something deeply human. Certain melodies soothe the mind. Others encourage courage. Still others invite quiet reflection. Even now, thousands of years later, many people continue finding comfort in gentle music during difficult moments. The understanding has changed. The experience remains familiar. Picture yourself sitting beneath an ancient olive tree as evening approaches. The branches twist gracefully after centuries of slow growth. Tiny leaves shimmer whenever the breeze passes through them. A shepherd guides his flock toward shelter, while distant temple bells quietly mark the approaching sunset. An old storyteller begins sharing memories with several children gathered nearby. His stories speak of heroes, kings, wise women, brave sailors, and curious philosophers. The children listen with wide eyes. Stories have always helped people understand experiences that seem too large for simple explanation. Sometimes they offer answers. Sometimes they simply offer companionship. Perhaps this is one reason Greek myths remained so important, not because every story explained reality literally, but because stories gave shape to emotions that words alone often struggled to describe: fear, hope, loss, love, longing, loneliness. These feelings have always been part of being human. The Greeks explored them through poetry, drama, philosophy, and myth. Yet depression, as we understand it today, remained just beyond the edge of their knowledge. They could describe its appearance. They could observe its effects. They could suggest treatments according to their best understanding. But they could not identify the invisible biological processes unfolding inside the brain. That discovery would require centuries of scientific progress, still far beyond the horizon. Night slowly settles across the landscape once more. The stars appear one by one above quiet villages, peaceful temples, and gently rolling hills. Oil lamps flicker inside modest homes where families finish their evening meals. Conversations become softer, footsteps disappear. Only the gentle chorus of crickets remains beneath the vast Mediterranean sky. Somewhere in that quiet darkness, another thoughtful physician continues searching for answers. Somewhere else, a philosopher wonders whether wisdom alone can heal every sorrow. Neither yet knows that future generations will continue asking the very same questions, though with entirely new tools and deeper understanding. Our peaceful journey through ancient Greece continues, one quiet step at a time. As another quiet night gently fades, the first light of dawn spreads across the rugged hills of Greece with almost unnoticed patience. The stars slowly surrender to a sky painted in pale blue and soft shades of gold. The sea reflects the morning light like polished glass, disturbed only by the gentle movement of fishing boats, leaving the shore before the day grows warm. Imagine breathing the cool morning air. It carries the scent of salt from the nearby coast, mixed with wild thyme growing between rocky paths. Olive trees stand silently where they have stood for generations, their twisted trunks bearing witness to countless seasons of peace, hardship, celebration, and quiet reflection. You find yourself walking toward the outskirts of a city-state, where the sounds of daily life are only beginning. A baker removes warm loaves from a clay oven. Smoke rises lazily into the brightening sky. A donkey patiently carries baskets filled with grapes harvested the previous afternoon. Nearby, an old woman sweeps the entrance of her home, humming a melody that her own mother once sang many years before. Life moves with familiar rhythm. For the ancient Greeks, this rhythm mattered greatly. They believed that nature itself followed an orderly pattern. Day followed night. Spring followed winter. Children became adults. Harvest followed planting. Even the stars appeared to move according to dependable paths. Order seemed to exist everywhere they looked. When something disturbed that order, people naturally searched for a reason. If crops failed, perhaps unusual weather had changed the balance. If sickness spread, perhaps something within the body had fallen into disorder. If a person's spirit seemed unusually burdened, surely some explanation must exist. Yet the answers were never simple. Picture yourself sitting quietly beneath the shaded porch of a modest home. Inside lives a family whose eldest son has changed over the past year. He once greeted every morning with energy. He enjoyed helping his father in the vineyard. He laughed during family meals. He eagerly joined friends at festivals honoring the gods. Now, those small pleasures no longer seem to reach him. He still rises each morning. He still performs his duties. But his movements have become slower, his conversations shorter. His smile appears only rarely. His mother notices first. Parents often notice quiet changes before anyone else. She wonders whether her son is working too hard. Perhaps he needs more rest. Perhaps he should spend more time outdoors. Perhaps he has become worried about the future. She prepares his favorite meal of fresh bread, olives, goat cheese, and figs. He thanks her kindly, yet he eats very little. She invites relatives to visit, hoping cheerful company might lift his spirits. For a short while, he seems almost like his old self. He smiles politely. He joins the conversation. But once everyone leaves, the silence returns. The heaviness returns with it. His family does not stop caring. Far from it. They simply do not possess the understanding that later centuries will gradually develop. Today, we know that depression often cannot be cured simply through encouragement or positive thinking. Love and support matter deeply. Yet even the strongest family cannot always remove an illness they cannot see. The Greeks faced this mystery with the knowledge they possessed. Imagine visiting a physician once more. This time the doctor spends longer observing his patient. He pays attention not only to words, but to posture, to appetite, to sleep, to the expression upon the face. Greek physicians believed careful observation revealed hidden truths. This habit distinguished many of them from healers who relied entirely upon superstition. Observation became their quiet science. A physician might notice that a patient no longer enjoys conversation, that his sleep has become restless, that he tires easily, that he avoids sunlight or social gatherings. Each detail matters. Each becomes another small piece of a puzzle whose complete picture remains invisible. Without understanding the brain, physicians often connected these symptoms to the balance of the body. If black bile remained their explanation, it was because they had no better framework. Rather than dismissing emotional suffering entirely, they tried to place it within the natural world. In a way, this represented an important step. Many earlier societies explained nearly every illness as the direct action of supernatural forces alone. Greek medicine gradually encouraged observation alongside belief. Although its conclusions were often mistaken, its method would influence medicine for centuries. As the morning slowly arrives in another part of Greece, you find yourself entering a school where young students gather beneath the shade of tall trees. Their teachers speak. Today, the lesson concerns neither mathematics nor poetry. Instead, the discussion asks a simple question. What makes a good life? The students answer one after another. Some say wealth, others say honor. One quietly suggests friendship. Another believes wisdom is the greatest treasure. Their teacher listens patiently before responding. A good life, he says, requires balance. Balance. Again, the idea appears. It touches medicine, education, politics, family life, even personal character. The Greeks admired moderation. Too much anger disturbed judgment. Too much pride invited trouble. Too much fear limited courage. Too much pleasure weakened discipline. Everything seemed healthiest when held in careful balance. This idea helped shape their understanding of emotional life. Someone overcome by overwhelming sadness appeared, in their eyes, to have lost that precious balance. But balance itself was not enough to explain why it happened. That mystery remained. Picture yourself walking toward the theater as afternoon shadows begin to lengthen. Large stone seats curve around an open stage. Soon, actors will perform one of the great tragedies for which Greece became famous. These plays were not simply entertainment. They explored grief, loss, fear, regret, love, hope, human weakness. The playwrights understood that every person carries hidden emotions. Characters mourn lost children. Kings struggle beneath impossible responsibilities. Queens endure loneliness. Warriors return home forever changed by conflict. Audiences watched these stories together. Many wept openly. No one considered tears unusual during such performances. The theater became a place where emotions could safely appear in public. Perhaps this tells us something important. The Greeks were not strangers to sadness. They understood heartbreak. They recognized mourning. They witnessed despair after war, famine, disease, and personal loss. What they could not fully explain was prolonged depression that seemed to exist without an obvious cause. Grief made sense. It followed loss. Melancholy that lingered without clear reason remained much harder to understand. As evening approaches, the actors remove their masks. Families begin walking home beneath skies painted with gentle colors of orange and violet. Children grow sleepy after a long day. Merchants close their shops. Shepherds count their animals one final time before nightfall. The air cools. The scent of wood smoke drifts from nearby homes, where simple evening meals are being prepared. Inside one such home sits an elderly grandfather. His grandchildren gather around him, eager to hear another story. He speaks softly, recalling his youth. He remembers long journeys across the Aegean Sea. He remembers difficult winters. He remembers seasons when olives grew in great abundance. He remembers friends who are no longer alive. His stories carry joy and sorrow together. The children listen quietly. Without realizing it, they are learning something timeless. Human emotions have always been complicated. Long before psychology became a science, people searched for ways to understand happiness and suffering. The Greeks asked thoughtful questions. They simply lacked many of the answers that later generations would slowly uncover. Tonight, beneath another sky filled with countless stars, physicians continue treating illnesses they can observe. Philosophers continue debating the nature of the soul. Families continue caring for loved ones whose sadness they cannot fully explain. And somewhere, in the quiet stillness between darkness and dawn, the mystery of the human mind waits patiently for discoveries that will not arrive for many centuries. Our peaceful journey through that mystery is only beginning. The darkness slowly softens as another gentle morning begins across the Greek countryside. Long before the marketplace fills with voices, the world is wrapped in a peaceful silence. The sky changes almost unnoticed, from deep blue to soft gray, and finally to a warm shade touched by the first light of the rising sun. A cool breeze moves through the rows of olive trees, causing thousands of tiny leaves to shimmer as though they are whispering to one another. Picture yourself standing on a hillside overlooking a quiet valley. Below, narrow paths wind between small farms where families have lived for generations. Stone walls divide vineyards from fields of barley, and small gardens overflow with onions, beans, herbs, and fragrant flowers. Thin trails of smoke rise from chimneys as breakfast is prepared before another day of work. Nothing feels hurried. The pace of life follows nature rather than the clock. This steady rhythm brings comfort to many people. Yet even in a peaceful place like this, not every heart feels calm. One farmer begins his day with determination. Another wakes already exhausted, though he has worked no harder than anyone else. One greets his neighbors with warmth. Another quietly avoids conversation. If you had lived in ancient Greece, you might have noticed these differences without knowing why they existed. Today, many people understand that depression is not simply a matter of attitude or personal choice. But for the Greeks, the explanation remained hidden behind the limits of their knowledge. They observed carefully. They reasoned thoughtfully. Still, the invisible workings of the brain remained beyond human sight. Imagine following a narrow road toward a vineyard where workers have gathered before sunrise. The grapes are nearly ready for harvest. Everyone has a task. Some inspect the vines. Others prepare baskets woven from reeds. A few sharpen simple tools while sharing quiet conversation. Among them stands a man who has worked these fields since childhood. His hands are strong. His experience is respected. Yet something has changed. He no longer joins the morning conversations. He finishes his work without complaint, but without enthusiasm. When the others laugh together during their midday meal, he sits slightly apart, staring across the hills. His friends wonder what troubles him. Perhaps he is worried about the weather. Perhaps he has argued with a relative. Perhaps he has become ill. They ask gentle questions. He offers polite answers. I am only tired. Sometimes, those are the only words he can find. Even today, many people experiencing depression struggle to describe what they feel. The experience often reaches beyond ordinary language. Ancient Greeks faced the same difficulty. Without modern psychological vocabulary, people explained invisible suffering using the words they already knew. Weariness, sadness, melancholy, weakness, unease. These words pointed toward the experience, but never fully captured it. As the morning slowly arrives, you continue your journey toward a small sanctuary dedicated to a local deity. The path grows quieter. Tall cypress trees cast long shadows across smooth stones worn by countless footsteps. Birdsong echoes gently through the branches. Visitors approach with respectful silence. Some bring small offerings of fruit. Others carry olive oil or carefully woven garlands. A few simply come seeking peace. Religion was deeply woven into everyday Greek life. People prayed before long journeys, before planting crops, before sailing across uncertain seas, before marriage, during illness, after loss. The gods were believed to influence many aspects of human existence. Yet Greek religion was rarely focused on explaining every detail of emotional suffering. A person overwhelmed by sadness might seek comfort in prayer, hoping for guidance or relief. Such practices often provided hope and a sense of connection. Hope itself has always been an important companion during difficult times. Although prayer could not explain depression as modern medicine does, it sometimes offered emotional comfort to those carrying invisible burdens. Nearby, an elderly priest quietly speaks with a visitor. He does not promise immediate answers. Instead, he listens. Perhaps listening has always been one of humanity's oldest forms of kindness. Long before counseling became a profession, people found relief simply by sharing their worries with someone willing to hear them patiently. The ancient Greeks understood conversation as an important part of community life. Ideas were exchanged in marketplaces. Questions were discussed in schools. Stories were told around evening fires. Listening and speaking helped people make sense of the world. Still, some sorrows remained difficult to ease. Imagine walking toward Athens, one of the greatest cities of the ancient Greek world. Its streets are busier than those of the surrounding villages. Merchants arrive from distant islands. Craftsmen shape marble into elegant statues. Philosophers gather beneath shaded colonnades, discussing questions that have no simple answers. Children accompany their teachers through the crowded streets, learning not only reading and writing, but also how to think carefully. Athens valued inquiry. To ask thoughtful questions was considered a noble pursuit. Why do the stars move? What is justice? What makes a person virtuous? How should a city be governed? These questions inspired generations of remarkable thinkers. Yet one question remained especially elusive. Why does the human mind sometimes become trapped in profound sadness? The philosophers offered different perspectives. Some believed suffering came from false judgments. Others suggested that peace could be found by accepting what lies beyond human control. Still others encouraged moderation in every aspect of life. Many of these ideas continue to inspire readers today. They offer wisdom about resilience, perspective, and character. But philosophy alone could not cure every illness. A person experiencing clinical depression might hear wise advice and still find the weight unchanged. The Greeks observed this reality, even if they could not fully explain it. As afternoon sunlight warms the marble buildings, you find yourself beside a quiet fountain where travelers stop to rest. Clear water flows steadily into a stone basin. Children laugh as they splash their hands in the cool water before running back toward their families. An old traveler sits nearby, leaning against his walking staff. Years of long journeys have lined his face with gentle wrinkles. He has seen many cities, many seasons, many victories and defeats. When asked what he has learned, he smiles softly. Every life, he says, contains both sunshine and shadow. His words are simple. Perhaps that is why they remain memorable. The Greeks knew that sorrow belonged to life. They saw families mourn loved ones. They witnessed cities recovering after war. They watched storms destroy ships that never returned. Loss was understood. Grief was expected. But the quiet sadness that lingered without visible cause continued to puzzle even the wisest observers. The sun slowly begins its descent. Long shadows stretch across the marketplace. Merchants carefully pack away their goods. The smell of freshly baked bread drifts from nearby ovens. Goatherds return home along familiar paths. The day's conversations grow quieter as evening approaches. Families gather once more around simple meals. Children speak excitedly about what they learned. Parents exchange stories from the day's work. Grandparents remember seasons long past. In one corner of the room sits someone whose silence has lasted many months. The family notices. They care deeply. They wish they knew how to help. They offer companionship. They encourage rest. They suggest visiting a physician. Everything they do comes from genuine concern. Yet the deeper mystery remains unsolved. Thousands of years later, we understand that compassion has always mattered, even when knowledge was incomplete. Ancient Greece gave the world remarkable ideas about philosophy, medicine, observation, and reason. But like every civilization, it also encountered questions that would require future generations to answer. As darkness gently settles over the land once more, the stars return above quiet temples, peaceful harbors, and sleeping villages. The sea continues its slow, timeless rhythm against the shore. Somewhere beneath that vast night sky, another thoughtful observer quietly wonders why invisible sorrow chooses one heart and not another. The answer remains hidden for now, waiting patiently through the centuries. And so our quiet journey continues, following the footsteps of those who searched earnestly for understanding, even when the path ahead remained unseen. The night slips away so gently that it is difficult to notice exactly when darkness becomes dawn. Above the quiet hills of Greece, the stars slowly disappear one by one, leaving behind a sky washed with pale shades of blue. A cool breeze carries the scent of the sea inland, passing through groves of olive trees before reaching small villages that are only beginning to wake. Imagine standing beside a narrow stream that has flowed through this valley for countless generations. Its water moves without hurry, slipping around smooth stones, polished by centuries of patient travel. Dragonflies hover above the surface, while small birds pause to drink before flying toward nearby fig trees. Everything around you seems to understand its place. The seasons come and go. The rivers continue their course. The sun rises faithfully each morning. For the ancient Greeks, nature appeared beautifully ordered. This sense of order shaped the way they understood almost everything. When they looked at the heavens, they searched for patterns among the stars. When they studied plants, they observed how each season brought predictable change. When they examined the human body, they expected to find that same harmony within. If harmony was disturbed, illness followed. This belief seemed entirely reasonable from their point of view, yet the human mind often refused to fit neatly into these patterns. You find yourself walking toward the edge of a bustling port, where ships have arrived from distant islands. The harbor is already alive with quiet activity. Sailors carefully coil thick ropes along wooden docks. Merchants inspect baskets filled with olives, wine, pottery, and woven cloth. The salty air mixes with the smell of fresh fish and damp timber warmed by the morning sun. Travelers bring more than goods. They carry stories, news from other cities, different customs, different beliefs. Some speak of prosperous harvests. Others tell of storms that nearly claimed their ships. Among these travelers are physicians who have learned from teachers in faraway places. Medicine in ancient Greece was never completely still. Knowledge slowly traveled from one city to another, carried by people willing to observe, question, and learn. Although their understanding remained incomplete, many physicians welcomed new ideas. Picture yourself listening to two healers discussing a difficult patient. The first believes the man's sadness comes from an excess of black bile. The second wonders whether too much isolation has weakened his spirit. Neither possesses the tools of modern neuroscience. Neither knows about serotonin, dopamine, or the intricate communication between billions of nerve cells inside the human brain. Still, they ask sincere questions. That curiosity deserves quiet respect. History often advances through people who are willing to admit that they do not yet know the answer. As the morning slowly arrives, You continue toward a shaded courtyard where several philosophers have gathered. They're not arguing loudly. Instead, they speak with thoughtful patience, pausing often to consider each other's words. One asks whether happiness depends upon external circumstances. Another suggests that true peace comes from within. A younger student listens carefully before asking a question of his own. "What if someone wishes to be happy?" he asks softly, "but cannot feel happiness?" The courtyard grows quiet. It is a remarkably difficult question. Even today, it remains difficult. One philosopher answers that wisdom may guide the troubled mind. Another speaks of moderation. A third encourages friendship and meaningful work. Their advice is thoughtful. It reflects genuine compassion. Yet somewhere, unseen by all of them, there is a person whose suffering cannot be lifted simply through wisdom alone. This is one of the great limits of ancient understanding. The Greeks recognized emotional pain. They valued thoughtful conversation. They believed friendship was essential to a good life. Aristotle himself would later describe friendship as one of life's greatest treasures, seeing it as deeply connected to human flourishing. Such ideas remain influential because they reflect enduring truths about human relationships. Friends often help carry burdens that seem impossible to bear alone. But friendship, however precious, is not always enough to cure illness. Depression is not merely loneliness. The Greeks could observe companionship bringing comfort, yet they could not see why comfort sometimes failed to remove the darkness entirely. Imagine walking through a peaceful cemetery just beyond the city walls. Simple stone markers stand quietly beneath tall cypress trees. Wildflowers bloom between the graves, and the wind moves gently through the grass. Ancient Greeks, like people everywhere, understood grief. Families mourned loved ones. Communities gathered for funerals. Poets wrote moving verses about loss. Grief was recognized as a natural response to death. No physician expected a grieving parent to smile the day after losing a child. Time, family, ritual, and memory all played important roles in healing. But depression often looked different. A person might experience overwhelming sadness without any recent loss, or grief itself might remain far longer than anyone expected. The distinction between these experiences was difficult to recognize. Modern psychology carefully separates grief from major depressive disorder, though the two can sometimes overlap. Ancient physicians lacked such categories. To them, the boundaries were far less clear. As afternoon sunlight spreads across the countryside, farmers pause beneath the shade of ancient olive trees. They share bread, cheese, dried figs, and cool water drawn from nearby wells. Conversation turns toward ordinary concerns: the coming harvest, the condition of the roads, a neighbor's new child, the arrival of traders from across the sea. Then someone quietly mentions a man who has stopped visiting the fields. He has remained inside his house for many days. Another nods. I hope he is recovering. No one speaks harshly. No one laughs. Instead, concern settles gently over the group. Sometimes history reminds us that compassion has always existed. People did not need modern science to care for one another. Parents comforted children. Neighbors visited the sick. Friends shared meals with those who felt alone. Acts of kindness are older than written history itself. Yet kindness alone could not answer every mystery. The sun begins its slow descent toward the western horizon. Golden light stretches across vineyards and rocky hillsides, making the landscape appear almost timeless. Children return home, carrying bundles of firewood gathered during the afternoon. Shepherds guide their sheep into stone enclosures where they will remain safe through the night. The familiar sounds of daily labor gradually give way to evening quiet. You find yourself sitting beside an elderly potter outside his workshop. His hands bear the marks of many decades spent shaping clay. As the wheel turns slowly beneath his fingers, he smiles. "Clay," he says softly, "teaches patience." He explains that some vessels form easily, others collapse without warning. The same clay, the same hands, a different result. Perhaps the human mind is not so different. Some lives remain steady through hardship. Others become fragile under burdens invisible to everyone else. The potter does not know the biology behind such differences. No one in his time does. Yet his quiet observation carries a gentle wisdom. Not every struggle can be explained by what the eye can see. Night gradually settles over Greece once more. Oil lamps glow behind wooden shutters. The scent of burning olive wood drifts through narrow streets. Above the sleeping cities and peaceful villages, countless stars appear once again, just as they did for generations before and generations yet to come. Somewhere, a physician finishes recording the day's observations, hoping tomorrow may reveal something new. Somewhere else, a philosopher closes a scroll and looks toward the night sky, wondering whether the soul still holds secrets beyond human understanding. Those secrets will remain hidden for many centuries, waiting patiently for discoveries that neither philosopher nor physician could yet imagine. And as the quiet Mediterranean breeze moves gently through the olive trees, our peaceful journey into that ancient mystery continues. A quiet stillness rests over the land before the sun appears. For a few peaceful moments, the world seems suspended between night and morning. The moon hangs low above the distant mountains, growing paler as the eastern horizon slowly brightens. Cool air drifts through the valleys, carrying the gentle fragrance of wild lavender, rosemary, and damp earth that has rested beneath the stars. Imagine standing beside an ancient olive tree whose roots have reached deep into the soil for generations beyond memory. Its branches move ever so slightly in the morning breeze. Perhaps children once climbed this very tree. Perhaps travelers rested beneath its shade after long journeys. Perhaps philosophers paused here while considering questions that would echo across centuries. The tree says nothing, yet it quietly reminds us that time moves slowly, and that understanding often grows just as patiently. As the morning slowly arrives, the roads leading into the city begin to fill. Farmers guide donkeys carrying woven baskets of vegetables. Fishermen return from calm waters with the night's modest catch. Potters balance carefully stacked jars on wooden carts. The sounds are gentle rather than hurried. Wooden wheels roll over uneven stones. Sandals brush against dusty paths. Voices remain soft in the cool morning air. For many people, this ordinary rhythm offers comfort. Routine has a quiet power. It gives shape to the day. The ancient Greeks understood this well. Their lives followed patterns set by sunrise and sunset, planting and harvest, festivals and seasons. When those familiar rhythms were interrupted, people naturally searched for a reason. Sometimes the cause was obvious. A drought, an illness, a storm, a poor harvest. Other times, no explanation presented itself. A person who had always risen early might suddenly remain inside his home. Someone known for thoughtful conversation might withdraw into silence. A woman who once enjoyed weaving with her neighbors might quietly stop joining them. These changes rarely happened overnight. They unfolded slowly, almost unnoticed at first. One quiet day, then another. Weeks passed. The change became more difficult to ignore. Picture yourself visiting a modest household where 3 generations live together beneath one roof. The grandmother rises before dawn, preparing bread in a clay oven. Her daughter draws fresh water from a nearby well. 2 young children chase each other across the courtyard before being gently reminded to wash for breakfast. In one corner of the house sits the eldest son. He watches the family with affection, yet he feels strangely separated from the warmth surrounding him. He wishes he could join their laughter. He wishes he could feel the simple happiness that once came so naturally. Instead, he feels as though an invisible wall stands between himself and the world. Today, many people describe depression in similar ways, not simply as sadness, but as distance, as though joy belongs to someone else. The ancient Greeks observed these experiences without possessing words that fully captured them. They noticed the silence. They noticed the withdrawal. They noticed the loss of interest. But they could not yet understand the hidden processes unfolding inside the brain. Instead, they searched for explanations that matched everything else they believed about nature. Balance, harmony, order. The 4 humors. These ideas formed the lens through which emotional suffering was interpreted. Imagine walking toward the academy, where students gather beneath tall trees to learn from respected teachers. The atmosphere is calm. No one rushes. Small groups discuss philosophy while strolling along shaded pathways. Others quietly read from handwritten scrolls. One teacher asks a simple question: what does it mean to know oneself? The students hesitate. Some speak about understanding personal strengths. Others mention recognizing weaknesses. One suggests that wisdom begins by observing one's own thoughts. The teacher smiles. The conversation continues. The Greeks placed enormous value on self-examination. To understand the soul was considered one of life's greatest pursuits. This search produced extraordinary philosophical insights. Yet even the wisest thinkers encountered limits. A philosopher might encourage courage. He might teach moderation. He might remind his students that fortune changes constantly. All of this offered valuable guidance. Still, guidance alone could not always lift someone from profound despair. This was not because philosophy lacked value. Rather, it was because depression often reaches deeper than ideas alone. Modern medicine recognizes that emotional illness may involve biology, genetics, environment, life experiences, and many other interacting influences. Such complexity remained hidden from ancient observers. As the afternoon sunlight filters through marble columns, you continue toward a small library where scrolls are carefully stored. The room smells faintly of papyrus, leather, and cedar wood. A scribe sits quietly copying a medical text by hand. Every letter demands careful attention. Mistakes cannot easily be erased. Nearby rests a collection of writings attributed to physicians who believed that careful observation was the foundation of medicine. These physicians encouraged future generations to watch patients closely rather than relying only upon tradition. Observe the fever, observe the breathing, observe the appetite, observe the sleep. This approach represented remarkable progress. Although their explanations often proved incorrect, their commitment to careful observation helped shape the future of medical thinking. Imagine how challenging it must have been to study an illness that leaves no visible wound. A broken arm can be seen. A fever can be measured by touch. An infected cut reveals itself clearly. Depression offers no such certainty. Its signs appear differently in different people. Some become quiet, others become restless. Some lose sleep. Others sleep far more than usual. even today, diagnosis requires thoughtful conversation rather than a single simple test. Ancient physicians faced an even greater challenge. They relied almost entirely upon what patients described and what careful observation revealed. As evening approaches, the city gradually slows. Merchants cover their goods. Children return home, carrying small bundles gathered during the day. Smoke rises gently from household fires, where simple meals begin to cook. The smell of lentils, fresh bread, onions, herbs, and olive oil drifts through the streets. Families gather together. Stories are shared. Laughter rises from one home, while quiet conversation fills another. Community was deeply important in Greek life. Neighbors often knew one another well. Festivals brought entire cities together. Religious ceremonies united families across generations. Meals were rarely hurried. People found comfort in shared routines. These connections often helped individuals through ordinary hardships. But even within the strongest communities, some people continued carrying invisible burdens. Their families noticed, their friends cared, their physicians tried to help, yet the mystery remained. Picture yourself looking out across the Aegean Sea as the last light of day fades into soft shades of purple and gold. The water reflects the evening sky with remarkable calm. A lone fishing boat glides slowly toward shore. Its sail catches the final breeze before darkness settles completely. The sea has always been a patient teacher. Its surface may appear calm, while powerful currents move quietly beneath. The human mind can be much the same. A person may smile politely, complete daily responsibilities, speak kindly with neighbors. Yet beneath that calm surface, unseen struggles may continue. The ancient Greeks could observe the surface. The hidden currents remained invisible. It would take many centuries before physicians began to uncover the biological foundations of mental illness. Still, we should not judge the ancient world too harshly. Every generation works within the knowledge available to it. The Greeks asked sincere questions. They searched carefully for patterns. They sought natural explanations instead of accepting mystery alone. Their answers were incomplete, but their curiosity became part of the long journey that eventually led humanity toward a deeper understanding of the mind. Night returns once more. The stars appear above quiet temples, peaceful villages, and gentle hills that have watched countless generations come and go. Oil lamps flicker behind wooden doors. Crickets sing in the cooling fields. The Mediterranean breeze moves softly through vineyards and olive groves, carrying with it the quiet promise of another dawn. Somewhere, a thoughtful physician closes his scroll after another day of careful observation. Somewhere else, a philosopher continues wondering whether every sorrow has a cause that reason alone can discover. Neither knows that the answers will emerge only after centuries of patient inquiry. And so, beneath the same stars that still shine above us today, our peaceful journey through ancient Greece continues, one quiet step at a time. The first light of morning arrives so gently that the sleeping world hardly seems to notice. A faint glow appears beyond the eastern hills, touching the highest olive branches before slowly spilling across vineyards, stone cottages, and winding paths that have carried countless footsteps over the centuries. The air is fresh after the cool night, carrying the familiar scent of damp earth, wild sage, and the distant sea. Imagine standing beside a small spring, where clear water has flowed for longer than anyone can remember. Its quiet murmur blends with the songs of early birds hidden among cypress trees. A shepherd pauses to fill a clay jug before continuing his journey, while nearby, a woman gathers herbs that will later season the family's evening meal. Nothing about this morning suggests that history is unfolding. It feels ordinary, Perhaps that is one of history's greatest lessons. The lives that shaped the ancient world were mostly ordinary lives. Farmers cared for vineyards. Potters shaped clay. Children learned from their parents. Grandparents shared stories as evening lamps flickered. Most people were not famous philosophers or celebrated generals. They were simply people, trying to live peaceful lives while making sense of joys and sorrows that felt deeply personal. Among them were those who carried invisible burdens. Picture yourself entering the home of an elderly physician who has spent many decades caring for his community. His beard has turned white with age, and his hands bear the quiet steadiness that comes from years of practice. Shelves around the room hold carefully labeled jars of dried herbs. Simple bronze instruments rest neatly upon a wooden table. Sunlight filters through a narrow window, filling the room with warm, golden light. A young apprentice sits nearby, carefully recording today's observations onto a scroll. The physician speaks softly. Medicine begins with seeing. The apprentice nods. The old man continues, not simply looking, but truly seeing. He explains that every patient tells a different story. One complains openly. Another hides pain behind polite conversation. Some recover quickly. Others remain unwell despite every effort. These lessons reflect something timeless. Good physicians have always learned by listening as carefully as they observe. Although the medical knowledge of ancient Greece was limited compared with today, careful attention to individual patients became one of its greatest strengths. Imagine a man arriving at the physician's home. He has visited several times over the past year. Each visit follows a similar pattern. The physician asks gentle questions. Are you sleeping? Only a little. Have you been eating? When I remember. Do your friends still visit? They try. The physician notices the quiet hesitation after every answer. He wishes he could offer certainty. Instead, he offers what knowledge he possesses: fresh air, nutritious meals, moderate exercise, music, conversation, rest. These recommendations seem simple. Modern medicine still recognizes that each of these may support emotional well-being. Yet today, they are understood as supportive care, not complete explanations or universal cures for depression. The ancient physician cannot know this. He believes he has addressed the imbalance as best he can. Still, the patient returns months later, carrying the same invisible weight. This must have puzzled thoughtful physicians enormously. Imagine trying sincerely to help someone while never fully understanding the illness before you. As the morning slowly arrives, you leave the physician's home and wander toward the edge of the city, where young students gather beneath broad shade trees. Their teacher unrolls a scroll and begins reading from the works of respected philosophers. Today's lesson concerns happiness. Can happiness be taught? Can wisdom protect a person from sorrow? Can virtue alone create peace? The students answer thoughtfully. Some believe knowledge is enough. Others disagree. One quietly suggests that fortune changes every life, no matter how wise a person becomes. The discussion continues without anyone raising a voice. The Greeks loved questions that had no simple answers. Perhaps this is one reason their philosophy continues to be read thousands of years later. Rather than promising certainty, it often encouraged thoughtful reflection. Yet there remained experiences that philosophy could only partially illuminate. Depression belonged among them. No amount of reasoning could fully explain why one person's spirit remained heavy, while another found joy in ordinary days. The mystery remained. Picture yourself continuing your walk toward the theater just before sunset. Workers prepare the stage for an evening performance. Actors adjust carefully carved masks representing grief, hope, courage, fear, and wisdom. Behind the stage, musicians quietly tune the strings of a lyre. The audience gradually gathers. Families arrive together. Friends greet one another warmly. Children whisper excitedly before the performance begins. The stories told here often explore the deepest parts of human emotion. Characters lose loved ones. Kings wrestle with impossible choices. Families are separated by war. Travelers spend years longing for home. These stories reveal something important. The Greeks did not avoid emotional suffering. On the contrary, they explored it with remarkable honesty, through drama, poetry, and song. Audiences understood grief. They recognized fear. They felt compassion. Watching tragedy together allowed communities to reflect upon the difficulties shared by all human beings. Still, even these powerful stories could not fully explain prolonged despair without visible cause. The curtain of understanding remained only partly lifted. As evening settles across the city, the performance ends. People leave quietly, discussing the story they have witnessed. Some praise the actors. Others reflect upon the difficult choices made by the characters. An elderly couple walks home beneath the first evening stars, speaking softly about events from many years ago that the play has gently brought back to memory. Stories have always helped people organize emotions. Sometimes they cannot remove pain, but they remind us that we are not alone in experiencing it. That truth remains as comforting today as it was in the ancient world. The streets gradually grow quieter. Merchants close heavy wooden shutters. Dogs curl beside doorways. The smell of warm bread gives way to the cool fragrance of the night air. Oil lamps flicker inside homes, where families prepare to rest before another sunrise. You find yourself walking slowly beyond the city walls. The sky above the Mediterranean has become a vast blanket of stars. Without the lights of the modern world, each constellation shines with remarkable clarity. Ancient Greeks often looked toward these same stars with wonder. They measured seasons by them. They guided ships across open water. They filled myths with celestial stories that gave meaning to the heavens. Yet no constellation revealed the hidden workings of the human brain. No star explained why unseen sorrow settled into certain lives. Those answers would wait patiently for future centuries. Science would slowly uncover tiny cells called neurons. It would reveal chemical messengers traveling between them. It would discover that emotional health arises from an extraordinary interaction of biology, experience, environment, and countless other influences. But here, in ancient Greece, none of that knowledge yet exists. There is only careful observation, thoughtful philosophy, compassionate conversation, earnest curiosity. These are not small achievements. They are the beginning of a much longer journey. The Greeks could not explain depression because they stood at the beginning of humanity's search, not its conclusion. They saw the symptoms. They recognized the suffering. They tried to understand invisible pain using the best ideas available to them. History rarely moves in sudden leaps. More often, it advances through countless quiet questions asked by thoughtful people over many generations. Tonight, beneath the same stars that watched over Socrates, Hippocrates, ordinary farmers, sailors, craftsmen, and children, those questions remain suspended in the cool Mediterranean air. The wind moves gently through ancient olive trees. The sea continues its endless conversation with the shore, and our peaceful journey through this remarkable world is not yet complete. Another quiet night slowly gives way to dawn. For a little while, the world rests in perfect stillness. The last stars remain above the western horizon, while the eastern sky begins to glow with the soft colors of morning. A cool breeze carries the scent of pine, olive wood, and the salty waters of the Aegean Sea. Somewhere far away, waves meet the rocky shore with a slow and gentle rhythm that has changed little since the days of ancient Greece. Imagine standing on a hill overlooking a city that is just beginning to wake. From this distance, the white stone buildings seem almost peaceful enough to blend into the landscape itself. Thin trails of smoke rise from household fires. A dog barks once before falling silent again. Farmers begin their walk toward distant fields, while fishermen prepare small boats for another day upon the water. The city awakens as it has for countless generations. One family begins baking bread. Another gathers water from a public fountain. Children rub sleep from their eyes as their parents prepare for another ordinary day. Life continues with quiet certainty. Yet hidden behind these familiar routines are countless private thoughts. No passerby can see them. No neighbor can measure them. Every person carries an unseen world within. The ancient Greeks understood this much. They knew that every individual possessed an inner life. Philosophers spent generations asking what the soul truly was. Poets described emotions with remarkable beauty. Playwrights explored fear, guilt, hope, courage, and grief. But even with all this wisdom, one mystery remained beyond their reach. Why could the mind become trapped in a sadness that seemed to have no clear ending? You find yourself walking through a quiet courtyard where an elderly teacher is speaking with several young students. There are no raised voices, only thoughtful conversation. The teacher asks them to consider something simple. When you see a man limping, you know his leg has been injured. The students nod. When you see someone with a fever, you know illness has entered the body. Again they nod. But when a person smiles politely while carrying great sorrow, how can you know what cannot be seen? The students fall silent. It is a question without an easy answer. Even today, despite centuries of scientific progress, depression often remains invisible to those around us. The Greeks recognized this invisibility. What they lacked were the scientific tools needed to understand it. As the morning slowly arrives, you continue your walk toward a small workshop where a sculptor is carefully shaping a block of marble. The room echoes with the soft tapping of bronze tools against stone. Fine white dust settles upon the floor. Sunlight enters through an open doorway, illuminating the unfinished figure standing before him. The sculptor pauses often. He studies the stone before making each careful strike. Too much force could ruin months of work. Too little would accomplish nothing. Patience guides every movement. History itself often advances in much the same way. Knowledge is shaped little by little, generation after generation. Question after question. Mistake after mistake. The ancient Greeks did not discover modern psychology. They did not understand brain chemistry. They could not observe microscopic structures hidden within the nervous system. Yet they carved away at ignorance with remarkable patience. Every careful observation became another small step forward. Imagine now that you leave the city and follow a winding road into the countryside. The afternoon sun warms the hillsides where sheep graze quietly beneath scattered olive trees. Wildflowers bloom among broken stones. Cicadas sing steadily from hidden branches, filling the warm air with their familiar chorus. You pass an old shepherd resting beneath a broad fig tree. His face carries the gentle lines of many years spent outdoors. He has watched children become parents, and parents become grandparents. He has seen prosperous harvests and difficult winters. He understands that life changes constantly. Without looking away from his flock, he speaks softly. The weather is never the same every season. He smiles. Neither are people. His words are simple, yet they carry quiet wisdom. Human beings have always noticed that emotions change. Some mornings begin with hope, others begin with worry. Some seasons seem filled with laughter, others bring unexpected sorrow. The Greeks carefully observed these changes. What puzzled them most were those whose sadness refused to pass. Days became weeks, weeks became months. The seasons changed, still the burden remained. This persistence made melancholy seem different from ordinary unhappiness. It suggested that something deeper was taking place. Unfortunately, that deeper reality remained hidden from ancient eyes. Picture yourself returning toward the city as evening approaches. Families gather outside their homes to escape the lingering warmth of the day. Children play simple games with stones and sticks. Neighbors exchange bread, olives, and fresh fruit. The scent of lentil stew drifts through narrow streets. An elderly woman begins telling stories from her youth. The younger children settle beside her, listening with quiet attention. Stories have always been a way of preserving wisdom. Some explain history. Some teach kindness. Others remind people that suffering eventually touches every life. Perhaps this is why Greek myths remained so meaningful. Although they were not medical explanations, they explored deeply human emotions. The gods themselves experienced jealousy, anger, longing, and grief. Heroes faced fear and despair. Queens mourned. Kings doubted themselves. These stories reflected an important truth. Emotional struggle is part of the human experience. But depression is something more than ordinary sorrow. That distinction would remain difficult to recognize for many centuries. As darkness slowly settles, oil lamps appear one by one throughout the city. Their small flames flicker gently behind open windows. The marketplace grows quiet. The temple steps become empty. Only the occasional footsteps of a late traveler disturb the peaceful streets. You find yourself sitting upon a weathered stone overlooking the sea. The moon rises slowly above the water. Its reflection stretches across the waves like a quiet path of silver. Somewhere nearby, a philosopher continues writing by lamplight. Elsewhere, a physician reviews the notes he has made about patients whose illnesses remain difficult to understand. Both men are sincere. Both wish to reduce suffering. Both are limited by the knowledge of their age. History asks no more of them than that. Every generation inherits unanswered questions. Some are solved, others remain. The ancient Greeks answered many remarkable questions about mathematics, philosophy, politics, ethics, medicine, astronomy, and logic. But the mystery of depression required discoveries that belong to a far more distant future. Only after centuries of observation, scientific experimentation, anatomy, neuroscience, and psychology would humanity begin to understand that the mind and the brain are connected in ways the ancient world could scarcely imagine. Yet without the Greeks' habit of questioning, perhaps that journey would have taken even longer. Their greatest gift was not that they possessed every answer. It was that they believed every thoughtful question deserved careful consideration. The breeze grows cooler as midnight approaches. The constellations wheel slowly overhead, just as they did more than 2,000 years ago. The olive trees stand quietly beneath the stars. The sea continues its endless rhythm. the villages sleep peacefully. And somewhere in the darkness, a thoughtful observer still wonders about the hidden sorrows carried by ordinary people. That quiet question has traveled across the centuries, reaching our own time, where science continues to search with the same patience that once guided the philosophers and physicians of ancient Greece. Our journey is almost complete. Only one final chapter remains, where we will gently leave the ancient world and reflect on the enduring legacy of its search for understanding. The gentle darkness lingers for a few final moments before another morning quietly unfolds across the ancient Greek world. The eastern horizon begins to glow with soft shades of pale gold and rose. A light mist drifts through the valleys, settling among vineyards and olive groves that have stood through countless seasons. Dew rests upon wild grasses, sparkling briefly before the rising sun slowly warms the earth. Imagine walking along a narrow stone path that winds between small farms and scattered fig trees. The only sounds are the distant call of birds greeting the new day, the quiet rustling of leaves, and the steady footsteps of villagers, beginning another familiar morning. Somewhere nearby, a shepherd gently encourages his flock toward fresh pasture. A potter opens the wooden shutters of his workshop, allowing the cool air to flow inside before the day's work begins. Life feels peaceful. It follows rhythms that seem almost timeless. For the people of ancient Greece, these rhythms offered reassurance. The seasons returned as expected. The stars appeared in familiar places. The sea continued its endless conversation with the shore. Nature seemed dependable, yet human emotions often refused to follow such predictable paths. Some mornings brought hope without effort. Others arrived carrying an invisible heaviness that no sunrise could immediately lift. The Greeks observed these differences carefully. They simply could not explain why they happened. You find yourself entering a modest courtyard where several neighbors have gathered before beginning their work. They speak about the weather, about a merchant who has recently returned from a distant island, about preparations for an upcoming religious festival. Conversation moves gently from one subject to another. Then someone quietly mentions an old friend who has not joined them for many weeks. He says he is tired. Another nods thoughtfully, but he is rested. A third adds, perhaps the physician should visit again. No one laughs. No one dismisses his suffering. Instead, they speak with quiet concern. History sometimes surprises us in gentle ways. Although ancient people lacked modern medical knowledge, compassion itself was never a modern invention. Families worried about one another. Neighbors noticed when someone disappeared from daily life. Friends offered conversation, food, and company. Kindness required no scientific discovery. It simply belonged to being human. As the morning slowly arrives, you continue toward a small school where children are already repeating lines of poetry beneath the guidance of an elderly teacher. Their voices rise together before fading into thoughtful silence. The teacher pauses his lesson and asks the children to observe the world around them. What do you see? One child points toward the mountains. Another notices birds flying overhead. A third speaks about the olive trees moving gently in the breeze. The teacher smiles. To understand the world, he says softly, we must first learn to observe it carefully. This simple lesson reflects something deeply Greek. Observation was not merely a habit. It became a way of seeking truth. The same careful attention shaped philosophy. It shaped medicine. It shaped astronomy. It shaped natural science. When physicians examined patients, they looked carefully for patterns. When philosophers studied human behavior, they searched patiently for deeper meaning. Neither group feared asking difficult questions. That willingness to observe became one of ancient Greece's greatest contributions to history. Yet observation has limits. A physician may notice sadness. He may notice sleepless nights. He may notice loss of appetite. He may notice withdrawal from family and friends. Still, without understanding the brain itself, these observations cannot reveal the complete picture. Imagine walking into a quiet library where rows of carefully stored scrolls fill wooden shelves. A young scholar copies passages from older medical writings, while an older teacher gently corrects occasional mistakes. The room is silent, except for the faint scratching of reed pens against papyrus. Knowledge here is precious. Every copied scroll may preserve ideas for generations yet unborn. Among these writings are descriptions of melancholy. The physicians who wrote them sincerely believed they were describing a natural illness rather than a punishment from the gods. Although their explanation centered upon black bile, their willingness to search for physical causes represented an important turning point. History often advances through imperfect ideas. An explanation may later prove incorrect, while still encouraging better questions. The theory of the four humors was mistaken, yet it encouraged physicians to study patients carefully rather than accepting mystery alone. Sometimes an incorrect answer still leads humanity one step closer to the truth. Picture yourself leaving the library during the warm afternoon. The city hums quietly with ordinary life. Stone masons continue shaping marble. Bronze workers polish newly finished tools. Weavers patiently guide colorful threads across wooden looms. Every craft requires patience. Every skill grows through years of careful practice. Understanding the human mind would require the same patience, though on a much greater scale. Thousands of years would pass before microscopes revealed living cells. Centuries more before scientists understood the nervous system in detail. Only in relatively recent history would researchers begin discovering how different regions of the brain communicate through intricate networks of neurons and chemical messengers. For the Greeks, all of this remained hidden beyond imagination. Yet they continued asking questions. Perhaps that is the quiet thread connecting their world to ours, the desire to understand. As evening approaches, preparations begin for a community gathering. Families carry simple meals to an open space near the edge of the village. Bread still warm from clay ovens. Fresh olives preserved in fragrant oil. Goat cheese. Figs. Grapes gathered from nearby vineyards. Children run happily between the adults, while older relatives sit together, sharing memories from years long past. Music begins softly. A musician plucks the strings of a lyre with gentle care. Another joins with a reed flute. The melodies drift across the warm evening air, blending with the distant sound of waves reaching the shore. Some people quietly sing along. Others simply listen. Music has accompanied humanity through every age. The Greeks believed it could shape character and calm the spirit. Modern science has discovered that music can indeed influence emotion, memory, and even certain biological responses. The explanations differ. The experience remains familiar. Imagine watching one man sitting quietly apart from the celebration. He listens carefully. For a brief moment, the music softens the heaviness within him. He closes his eyes as the melody floats gently through the evening breeze. When the song ends, his burden has not disappeared. Yet perhaps it feels slightly easier to carry. Not because the illness has been cured, but because beauty sometimes reaches places that words cannot. Ancient Greece understood the value of beauty. Its temples reflected harmony. Its sculptures celebrated balance. Its poetry explored human emotion with extraordinary sensitivity. Even without modern psychology, the Greeks sensed that art could comfort the soul. Night slowly settles across the countryside once again. The celebration comes to a peaceful close. Families return home beneath a sky overflowing with stars. Oil lamps glow softly behind stone walls. Dogs curl quietly beside wooden doors. The last conversations fade into silence. You remain for a moment beneath the vast Mediterranean sky. Above you shine the same constellations that guided sailors, inspired poets, and stirred the curiosity of philosophers more than 2,000 years ago. Those stars offered direction across the sea, but they could not illuminate every mystery hidden within the human heart. The ancient Greeks accepted that some questions remained unanswered. Still, they continued searching. They observed, they reasoned, they debated, they listened, and in doing so, they laid part of the foundation upon which later generations would continue building. Our peaceful journey through their world is drawing ever closer to its quiet conclusion. One final chapter remains, where the long search for understanding gently comes to rest. The final night of our journey settles gently across the ancient Greek landscape. The air is calm, carrying only the faint scent of olive wood, wild herbs, and the distant sea. Above, countless stars stretch across the sky with a quiet brilliance that has inspired travelers, poets, philosophers, and dreamers for thousands of years. Their light falls upon silent temples, sleeping villages, peaceful harbors, and winding paths that have witnessed generations of ordinary lives. Imagine standing upon a gentle hillside one last time. Below you, the lights of scattered homes flicker softly as families prepare for sleep. Somewhere, a mother hums a familiar lullaby to her child. An old shepherd rests after another day among the hills. A fisherman secures his small boat before the tide changes with the coming dawn. Everything feels unhurried. Everything feels connected to the steady rhythm of nature. As our quiet journey draws to its close, we return to the simple question that first guided us. Why couldn't the ancient Greeks explain depression? The answer is not that they lacked intelligence, quite the opposite. Few civilizations have contributed so much to the foundations of human thought. They explored philosophy with remarkable depth. They developed systems of logic that still influence education today. They transformed mathematics, astronomy, medicine, literature, and political thought. They asked questions that many societies had never dared to ask. Most importantly, they believed that the world could be understood through careful observation and patient reasoning. That belief changed history forever. Yet every civilization lives within the limits of its own knowledge. The Greeks could only investigate what their senses allowed them to observe. They could see broken bones. They could feel fevered skin. They could examine wounds. They could listen carefully as patients described their suffering. But they could not look inside the living brain. They had no microscopes, no medical imaging, no understanding of neurons, no knowledge of neurotransmitters, no awareness of genetics, no scientific framework for psychology or psychiatry as we know them today. Those discoveries belonged to centuries that had not yet arrived. Picture yourself visiting one final physician in a quiet Greek town. He has devoted his entire life to helping others. He has treated fevers, broken limbs, infections, and difficult births. He has comforted grieving families. He has studied every medical scroll he could obtain. Now an old patient returns once more. The physician recognizes him immediately. The familiar sadness remains. He examines him carefully. He asks thoughtful questions. He recommends nourishing food, fresh air, gentle exercise, meaningful conversation, music, rest. Everything he suggests comes from genuine compassion and sincere belief. He wishes deeply for his patient to recover. If his treatments fail, it is not because he lacks kindness. It is because history has not yet revealed the answers he needs. This is one of the quiet lessons the ancient world offers us. Good intentions and complete understanding are not always the same. Throughout history, people have often cared deeply while knowing only part of the truth. Imagine now that you leave the physician's home and walk slowly toward the edge of the city. The Acropolis rises in the distance, glowing softly beneath the afternoon sun. Its marble buildings seem timeless. Children laugh as they chase one another through narrow streets. Merchants continue weighing grain. Potters shape fresh clay. Life moves forward without pause. Most people will never know that the questions asked here will travel across thousands of years. The philosophers debating beneath shaded colonnades cannot imagine modern laboratories. The physicians recording careful observations cannot picture hospitals filled with advanced technology. The poets describing human sorrow cannot foresee psychologists helping patients understand emotions through methods still centuries away. And yet, in a quiet way, all of them contribute something lasting. They teach humanity to keep asking, to keep observing, to keep learning. History rarely unfolds through sudden moments of complete understanding. More often, it advances through countless small discoveries made by ordinary people who refuse to stop searching. The Greeks became part of that long tradition. Some of their conclusions proved mistaken. The theory of the four humors eventually gave way to more accurate medical knowledge. Black bile was not the hidden source of depression. Bloodletting could not restore emotional health. Many treatments they trusted would later be abandoned. Yet their mistakes also became stepping stones. Every generation inherits ideas from those who came before. Some are preserved, others are corrected. Together, they form the slow and patient progress of human knowledge. As the morning slowly arrives on another imagined day, you find yourself walking beside a young student who dreams of becoming a physician. He carries only a small bundle of scrolls and a heart full of curiosity. He does not know that the path ahead will leave many questions unanswered. Still, he chooses to learn. Perhaps that is enough. Curiosity has always been one of humanity's greatest strengths. Long before anyone understood the biology of depression, people searched for ways to ease suffering. Parents comforted children. Friends listened without judgment. Communities gathered during difficult times. Music softened heavy hearts. Stories reminded listeners that they were never entirely alone. Although ancient medicine could not explain depression, ancient compassion remained real. That compassion deserves to be remembered alongside the limitations. Today, our understanding has grown enormously. Researchers continue studying the remarkable complexity of the human brain. Doctors recognize that depression is a genuine medical condition influenced by many interacting factors, including biology, life experiences, environment, and genetics. Effective treatments may include psychotherapy, medication for some individuals, lifestyle support, social connection, or combinations of these approaches tailored to each person's needs. Even now, however, scientists continue learning. The story is not finished. Every new discovery reminds us how much remains unknown. In that sense, we are not entirely different from the Greeks. We also ask questions. We also revise our understanding. We also hope that tomorrow's knowledge will be greater than today's. Perhaps this is the greatest connection between their world and ours. Not certainty, but curiosity. Not perfect answers, but the willingness to continue searching. The evening returns once more to the ancient Mediterranean. The sea breathes slowly against the shore. Olive branches sway gently beneath the cooling breeze. The last shepherd guides his flock toward shelter. Oil lamps begin glowing inside quiet homes where families gather for one final meal before sleep. Above them, the stars appear exactly as they always have. The same stars watched over Hippocrates as he observed his patients with careful attention. They watched philosophers wonder about the nature of the soul. They watched poets give words to grief that others struggled to express. They watched countless ordinary men and women carry unseen joys and unseen sorrows through lives that history would never record. Those ordinary lives mattered. Their questions mattered. Their compassion mattered. And although they could not explain depression, their determination to understand the human condition became part of a much longer story, a story that continues into our own time. As our journey quietly comes to an end, the sounds of the ancient world gradually fade. The marketplace grows still. The temple steps become silent. Fishing boats rest gently upon calm waters. The wind moves softly through the olive groves, carrying with it the peaceful whispers of a civilization that never stopped wondering. The stars remain overhead, patient as ever. The sea continues its endless rhythm. The night grows calm. And somewhere beyond the quiet hills of ancient Greece, the first light of another morning is already waiting, reminding us that every ending is also the beginning of another search for understanding. The journey is complete.